Newlywed vanished from Roadside Motel in 1999. 25 years later, her wedding invitation was found inside a Bible no one remembered donating. Hello, my viewers. Welcome to the channel. We are just getting started, and your support means a lot. If you enjoy these stories, please consider subscribing and help us reach our first 1,000 subscribers. Thank you for being here. It was just a Bible, stacked behind 4 others, on a shelf no one had touched in years. They were clearing out the basement of St. Luca's, a small, quiet church in Missouri. Water damage on the walls, mice droppings near the back pantry. Most of the books were too old to catalog. Molded hymnals, blank devotionals. But this Bible was sealed tight. No tears, no name on the cover. The spine hadn't cracked, its corners still sharp, like it had been placed, not tossed. When the church secretary opened it, there was nothing on the first few pages. No dedication, no notes in the margins. But then she reached the middle, between Psalms and Revelation, and something fell out. A wedding invitation, folded in thirds, ivory cardstock, pressed with gold ink. No smudges, no fingerprints, just a name, Mary Beth and Forrester, underlined once, in red, ink, not marker, thin, almost like it had been done by a fountain pen. Someone didn't mean to use. At first they thought it was nothing, a keepsake, maybe misplaced, until someone ran the name through a database, and the silence that followed wasn't the kind you forget. Mary Beth had vanished 25 years earlier, July 11th, 1999. She was 24, newly married, on her way to meet her husband in Tulsa. She never arrived. Her last known location, a roadside motel, in a town that barely makes the map. No one saw her leave. No one saw her taken. She was gone before the maid knocked for cleaning. There was no damage to the room, no forced entry, no blood, no struggle, just the impression of a suitcase. On the end of the bed, a damp ring left by glass on the windowsill, and a pale blue heel. In the sink, not on the floor, not misplaced, in the sink, like someone put it there, deliberately, or forgot it after rinsing something else off. No one knows. Her husband, Sean Forrester, was questioned for weeks. They'd only been married 9 days. He said they'd gotten in an argument about which route to take. She wanted the scenic one. He wanted the highway. He said she left in her own car, told him she'd see him there, told him not to call unless it was important. He never saw her again. And her car, a white '98 Civic, was found abandoned 2 weeks later, in an apartment complex 3 towns over. No keys, no prints, no signs of entry. The seats were dry. There was a receipt in the glove box for gas station 2 hours east that no one remembered her at. One witness, an elderly woman living across from the lot, said she saw someone move the car a few days before the police found it. She thought it was a young man. She wasn't sure. She said the person stood still for a long time after parking, like they were listening for something or waiting. Back then, there was no footage, no door cams, just descriptions and the sound of a door shutting in the middle of a hot July night. The motel itself, Red Pines Road Inn, was the kind of place you pass without noticing. Peeling paint, a soda machine out front. That never worked. Room 6B was the last one on the left, closest to the ice machine. She checked in under the name Miss Delaney. Paid in cash. Didn't ask for a wake-up call. The girl at the desk remembered her dress, said it looked like a wedding gown. Simple, not flashy. She kept glancing over her shoulder, like she expected someone to follow. But no one came. Not that night. Not the next morning. When housekeeping entered, the bed was made. The lamp was still on. There was a single line of condensation on the mirror that hadn't dried, as if someone had been standing there, breathing, watching. But the room was empty, and she was gone. No note, no calls, no withdrawal from her accounts. Just absence. For 25 years, the case went cold. Her parents died waiting. Sean remarried quietly, The town stopped asking. Until the Bible. The crisp wedding invitation. Her name. Underlined in red. It didn't make sense. There was no record of the Bible ever being in circulation. The church didn't recognize it. The basement logs showed no donation. That matched the description. No fingerprints. No fibers. Just old dust. And something floral. Like lavender. Or dried rose petals. Forensics said the ink was from the early 2000s. The paper was untouched by sunlight. It had been kept away. Safe. Someone had preserved it. Someone had waited. And someone, somewhere, had let it surface. Not by accident. Not after this long. The red ink. The choice of passage. Psalms to Revelation. Between grief and judgment. There's a kind of cruelty in that. A kind of message. Only meant to be found. When it's too late. To change anything. And someone, somewhere, still knows what happened in room 6B. And why Mary Beth Forrester never made it out. Not alive. Not whole. Not remembered. Until now. They sent the Bible to the state lab. Kept it in a temperature-controlled archive for 72 hours. Nothing on the cover. No skin oil residue. No prints beneath the invitation. But inside the binding, under ultraviolet light, they found a faint watermark. A faded manufacturer's stamp. Used only for a limited time. In 2002. 3 years after Mary Beth disappeared. The paper was newer than the person who vanished. And the invitation that had been printed in June 1999. Records confirmed it. Same format, same color. The original design was ordered from a small shop in Tulsa. The owner still had a sample. But this one, the one in the Bible, wasn't sealed with the original wax. It had been refolded. Once. Deliberately. Not torn. Not bent. The crease was exact. A single fold. As if it had been tucked. Between something important. Or hidden. On purpose. The lab couldn't determine who touched it last. The ink used to underline her name wasn't in commercial circulation. It was traced to a specialty pen company. One that closed in 2006. Limited run. No bulk orders. Mostly sold at trade fairs. Niche. Untraceable. And quiet. Like someone was trying not to be remembered. They brought Sean Forrester in again. He'd moved to Ohio. Taught middle school. Lived alone now. Divorced twice. No kids. He hadn't spoken Mary Beth's name in almost 20 years. Said it out loud like it hurt. Like it was something you whisper. In a hospital hallway. After bad news. He was cooperative. Cautious. He said he remembered the invitation. Remember how proud she was. Choosing it herself. She'd loved the gold embossing. Said it looked like something from a dream. But when they showed him the folded one, he froze. He said, this one looked too new. Like someone had never opened it. He swore he didn't have that Bible. Said they never owned one like it. At their wedding, they used a small leather-bound devotional. Her grandmother's. He hadn't seen this edition before. But then he asked them a strange question. He asked if they had found anything else. Like what? They asked. He didn't answer. Just blinked. Hard. And said, Mary Beth was scared of silence. They asked what that meant. He told them she used to hum. When she was nervous. Never words, just noise. Low and shaky. Mostly when she felt watched. She once told him, the worst part of growing up was being in the back seat of a quiet car when no one was speaking. Said it reminded her of something she couldn't name. Something in her childhood. She blacked out. But silence, it brought it back. He said she never liked mirrors, either. Would cover them. When she stayed in hotels. Especially bathroom mirrors. The last time he saw her. She kissed him in the parking lot of a diner. And then pulled away. He said it didn't feel like an argument. It felt like a rehearsal. Like she'd planned that moment. Ahead of time. And now, 25 years later, a wedding invitation shows up. In a Bible that didn't belong to them. Donated to a church no one in her family ever attended. In a state she'd never visited. And no one saw it arrive. There's a kind of choreography to that. A kind of patience. Most people don't have. They reopened the file. Pulled the motel logs from 1999. The guest check-in book had long since been thrown away, but the police had kept photocopies. Bad resolution. Smudged signatures. On the line below Marybeth's alias, Miss Delaney, was a name that no one ever investigated. Howard Reams. Room 6C. Next door. Paid in cash. Only stayed one night. The original detective hadn't followed up. No red flags at the time. No reason to. But now, the name had a record. Howard Reams had died in 2011. Heart failure. Lived in Arkansas all his life. But in 2002, he'd been employed as a night custodian at a university library. One stayed over, where the same brand of Bible had once been donated to the campus chapel. Same stamp. Same binding. They pulled his employment records. One ID badge. One photograph. A thin man. Wire glasses. Comb over. Soft eyes. Nothing about him looked violent. Nothing about him screamed danger. But in his final effects, in a sealed cardboard box from the assisted living facility, was a drawer full of paper. Folded carefully. Labeled. Filed. Dozens of invitations. To weddings. Graduations. Receptions. None of them addressed to him. None of them sent. All pristine. All cataloged. And in the back of the box, in a small Ziploc bag, was one more. The exact same as Marybeth's. Except this one was blank. No names. No date. Just a design. As if he'd practiced. Preserving it. The question isn't why he had it. The question is, why did only hers get returned? And why now? Why wait? Why leave a message? In a book no one was meant to find. Unless someone wanted the silence broken. Unless someone else was watching him too, and knew what it meant to underline a name. 25 years after it vanished, they brought in a handwriting analyst. Quiet man, retired FBI. He spent 3 hours comparing the red underline to other markings found in the Reams box. Not letters, just strokes, pressure, direction. He couldn't confirm it. Said the underline didn't quite match the others. Too fluid, too restrained, too recent. He said something else too. Something no one expected. The ink. It had been traced. Pressed down. Over an earlier line. There were grooves beneath it. Faint but measurable. As if someone had underlined Marybeth's name once. And then someone else had done it again. Later. Same direction. Same angle. But different pressure. Different hand. Two people. At two different times. Touching the same name. In the same way. That kind of coincidence isn't a coincidence. It's ritual. They exhumed Howard Reams. The coroner's report held. Natural causes. No signs of trauma. No hidden journals. Just a small, rusted key. Found taped to the inside lid of his toolbox. It didn't match anything in his house. The number on the key, 42 to 61, was traced to a storage facility. 60 miles outside Thamesworth. The unit had been cleared. 2 years after his death. Belongings unclaimed. Discarded. But the ledger still had the original contents listed. Old furniture. 2 dressers. A desk. 3 boxes of books. 1 box labeled MF. Those initials should have triggered something. But they didn't. Not back then. No one opened it. The box was never cataloged. It was incinerated. Routine disposal. Whatever had been inside. Gone. Ashes in a furnace. 5 counties away. It wasn't the loss of evidence that haunted the detective. It was the idea that someone had gone to the trouble to store it, label it, preserve it, only to never return. That kind of storage isn't accidental. That's memory, or guilt, or both. Sean Forrester was contacted again. This time, they showed him the storage records. He stared at the initials for a long time. Said he didn't recognize the name. Didn't know a Howard. But then he asked a question. That didn't match the topic. He asked if anyone had ever checked the honeymoon suite. They told him there wasn't one. Red Pines Road Motel was too small for that. He said no, not the motel. The real one. He said they were supposed to stay at the Langford Arms. They had it booked. Suite 4D. But they never made it. He'd always wondered if she drove there anyway, if she changed her mind. Midway through that long road, he said she did that sometimes. Vanished. Into her own choices. They looked into it. Langford Arms had shut down in 2013. Structural damage. Black mold. Condemned. The building still stood. Boarded. Empty. The owners never sold it. Too much asbestos. Too much history. They got a warrant. Cut the boards. Went inside. The walls smelled like mildew and copper. The floor sagged near the kitchen. But upstairs, Suite 4D was still locked. Not with a deadbolt. With a chain. From the inside. They forced it open. The room was intact. Dust thick on the windows. Curtains torn. But nothing had been stolen. On the dresser, a small mirror faced the wall. And beneath it, a single object. A wedding ring. Tarnished. Inscribed. Yours. M. Sean identified immediately. It had been hers. But she hadn't worn it. On their wedding day. She said it felt too heavy. Had left it in her bag. He thought it was lost. Now, here it was. Not in her car. Not at the motel. But in the place. They never made it to. The place. They were supposed to begin. And someone had locked the door. From the inside. There were no signs of entry. No broken window. No other exit. Just a ring. And the mirror. Turned to the wall. The detective stood in silence for a long time. Listening. To the creaks. To the wind. To something else. Just beneath the sound. A low hum. Coming from the floorboards. They lifted one panel. Then another. Until they found it. A cassette tape. Wrapped in cloth. Tied with red thread. No label. No date. They played it back. At the lab. And for 12 minutes. There was nothing. Just hiss. Ambient static. And then. A voice. Faint. Cracked. Female. Repeating 3 words. Over and over. He didn't leave. Then silence. And a hum. Low. Unsteady. Almost musical. Like someone trying to drown something out. Then footsteps. Slow. Measured. A door creaked. Then the recording ended. The text enhanced the audio. The acoustics matched a small, furnished room. Wooden walls. Low ceilings. No windows. They compared the tape's reverb signature to that of Suite 4D. It matched. Exactly. She'd been there. At some point. After the motel. After the Civic was abandoned. After the name was underlined. Mary Beth had entered that room. Sat there. With a recorder. With her ring. And she said it. He didn't leave. But who was she talking about? Sean. Reams. Someone else entirely? The tape didn't say. There were no dates. No names. Just that voice. Tired. Flat. Like someone. No longer expecting. To be heard. That kind of voice. Doesn't cry for help. It just lingers. And now. It lingers still. In the lab. In the hallway. In the heads of the detectives. Who listened to it. Night after night. Waiting for a second voice. One that never comes. They never found her. Not the body. Not the car again. Not the person who took the photos. No more tapes surfaced. No more invitations. No second Bible. Just that ring. That hum. That underlined name. They questioned everyone. Former neighbors. Clerks. Librarians. No one remembered her clearly. Just fragments. A girl who smiled too politely. Who spoke softly. As if she didn't want her words to stay in the room after she left. Her mother had described her as someone who carried grief before life gave her reason to. Like it was inherited, not learned. Like she already knew what silence could do to a person. The FBI closed the case again. 6 months after the Bible appeared. No physical evidence to tie Reams. No confirmed identity in the photos. No living witness. But the detective who worked the reopened file. He kept a copy of the audio. Played it sometimes. At the end of his shifts. Just to remind himself that some voices never make it to trial. That some truths only exist in quiet. He said the thing that haunted him most was not her disappearance. It was the pacing. 12 minutes of tape. And only 3 words spoken. Like someone wasn't sure they were allowed to say more. He said it felt like she was waiting for permission, or forgiveness, or both. The invitation is now sealed in evidence, preserved under glass. The red line through her name has already started to fade again. They tried to raise the ink, but it bled, blurred, like it wasn't meant to be reversed. Only seen once, then forgotten. Sean moved again. No forwarding address, no listed phone. Before he left, he sat with one of the investigators. Said he wanted to tell her something he hadn't shared before. Not because he was hiding it, but because, back then, it hadn't seemed like anything. He said 3 nights before she vanished. Mary Beth had woken up at 2:12 a.m., sat straight up, and just stared at the closet. He thought she was sleepwalking, but she whispered. He was there again. And then, he doesn't speak, but he listens. Sean told her it was a dream, that she was safe, that no one could get to her. She didn't argue. She just laid back down, and didn't close her eyes for the rest of the night. He said he watched her, watched the dark, like she was waiting for it to blink first. The night before she disappeared, she left him a note. It wasn't long. It said, "If I seem far away tomorrow, I'm not. I'm just choosing what stays." He thought it was metaphor, a bride's sentimental cold feet. But now, he's not sure what she meant, choosing what stays. She didn't pack her camera. She didn't take her scarf. She left behind a letter she'd written to her future self, sealed in a red envelope. It was blank inside. No message, just space. Maybe that was the message. Maybe she knew something was closing in, something with patience and a system. And maybe she tried to leave behind just enough, not to be found, but to be known. Just enough to make someone remember. The Langford Arms was demolished in the spring. The suite no longer exists. The floorboards, the mirror, the hum, gone. They found one more tape, hidden in the walls, unlabeled, warped. The audio was damaged, but the first 10 seconds were intact. A woman's voice, not speaking, just humming. Same tone, same rhythm as the end of the first tape. Then footsteps. 2 sets. Then something. A scrape. A click. The low groan of wood shifting. And finally, a breath. Soft, like someone seeing daylight after being underground. That tape is still being analyzed, but no new names have been found. No new sightings. The final file report uses the word inconclusive 8 times. Cause of disappearance unknown. Time of final recording unknown. Identity of second individual unknown. But it closes with a sentence, added by hand. Not standard. Not protocol. Written in ink, just beneath the last paragraph. It says, "Not everything hidden is lost. Some things choose silence." That sentence wasn't written by the detective, not by the analyst, not anyone on record. No handwriting match. But it was there, the day the file was closed. Added in red ink. Thin. Faded. Like it had been there all along. And someone just underlined it. Once. Gently. And then walked away.